Welcome to INNOV-8 Presents Entrepreneurs in Tech. Today we're delighted to have our guest all the way from the UK, Dr. Ewelina Kurtys. Dr. Ewelina, pleasure to have you on the show. Dr. Ewelina happened to be the founder and CEO of EKI and strategic advisor of FinalSpark. There's so much to talk about and dig into. Dr. Ewelina, if you don't mind, to give us a small introduction about yourself. I know it cannot be small from everything you accomplished so far, but at least just summarize it before we get into it, because there's so much to talk about, and I know it's going to be so much. There's a lot, so many insightful information that you could share with us and our viewers here on the show. Please go ahead. The microphone is yours.
Hello everyone. So thank you so much for such a nice introduction. I'm Ewelina Kurtys. I have PhD in neuroscience, and after I left academia, I started to work on artificial intelligence because a lot of it is inspired by actually human biology and neuroscience. And I started to work with small startups. I discovered this is the best environment for me. And later I also started to work on the future of artificial intelligence, which we believe is biocomputing. And this is the main topic for today. So FinalSpark is the startup in Switzerland, which is building a new biocomputer, which will be built from living neurons. And that's a totally new, disruptive technology. And the reason why we do this is because neurons are 1 million times more energy efficient than digital hardware. So we want to solve the problem that AI is using increasing amount of energy.
Absolutely. Yes, it is. That's a big problem. And I think the world the world is very excited. That's all I have to say. But have they calculated? Have they thought what's the side effects? And are we able to sustain such demand for energy and supply of water to cool it? I don't think so yet.
Yes, I think at the moment maybe this problem is not burning enough. But when we look at the trends, that the energy consumption is increasing exponentially, then it's easy to predict that in a few years it can be a huge problem. But still today is manageable. So I think maybe it's not yet so obvious that we might
Well,
have a problem
we
with
all
AI.
know why. We all know why, because the data centers and this whole massive infrastructure that's being built worldwide in many places in the world, including the States and Europe and the Middle East, it's not yet finished. It just started. So they're only building. They're not even going through the process. Yeah, it's built. That's how much we need. They have calculation, but we really never start using this energy yet. To keep this supply and demand, because we're in a building phase right now.
Yes.
Dr. Ewelina, before we get into all of this, I just want to give a little bit of background. How this whole thing, how did you end up where you are? What was the motivating factor? If we go back to your teenage years, when you were growing up in Poland, was it your mom, your dad, what influenced you and motivated you to be where you are now? And say, hey, Ewelina, this is the path you need to take. This is what I want. This is what I love. Was it mom, dad, or just love of science and technology itself?
Yes, my parents definitely always encouraged me to study, and they always said me that I will have easy life if I study, which was, I think, common belief in Poland in 90s, because we just finished the communism. So, we started to have free market, and everyone believed that you can have whatever you want if you earn this. And actually, in my case, it was working. It worked, this advice, because indeed, I think my life is very comfortable and easy because of the education, because I can do stuff which I believe it's not really work, it's just fun. And I was always fascinated with becoming a scientist. I really don't know why. Maybe because I was somehow fascinated with books. I had a lot at home, and I thought that it's amazing job to be a scientist, to discover something. So I always knew I want to do PhD. So that at least until the PhD point, my path was very clear. I knew what I want to do, but later I realized that I really don't know what to do because I love to explore, and I wanted to know something new. And I always knew that I don't want to stay forever in academia, that for sure I want to do something else, but I didn't know what is this. because I had absolutely no idea about industry and how it works. So initially I was thinking that maybe I will apply for some big company and, search for some scientist job. But later I discovered this business development. And just by, asking people and trying to figure out, I was lucky because at that point of the transition, I was living in London, and I think it was perfect place because it's a lot of networking opportunities. It was just before COVID, so I was lucky. I still could go around and, just ask people and just see. And just by explorations, I discovered that there are actually many small companies which are doing very interesting stuff, very technical. And this is how I discovered my way, my way for working with the small companies. And then when we talk about FinalSpark today, I met the founders at one of the London conference, which was AI Summit. At that time, it was really interesting because it was time before generative AI, before ChatGPT. I think now when we talk about AI, it's only about ChatGPT, because it can do everything. So it became a little bit boring. But before that, actually, there were many different applications discussed. And I was really impressed even by some text analysis, some stuff which people were doing at that time. It was really surprising that you can get a summary of different articles and stuff. It was really impressive. So I get actually fascinated by artificial intelligence, and yes, and also by the future of AI, which is also very close connected to biology.
That was my next question. What is the future of AI? And you mentioned something about neuroscience and connecting computers and all that in, your new company in Switzerland that you're working on. Are we going to be connected to computers? Let me just flat out say it, without being, scientifically careful with my words. Are we going to one day be connected through a chip or through, I don't know, a wire? Or you be able to sit down at night and connect yourself, kind of recharge yourself, give yourself information or feed your brain and scan your body, see if you're healthy, see if something wrong with you. And are we going to be at that level? Are we going there?
Actually, this is not the objective of FinalSpark to really connect to.
Yeah.
I will explain later, but I think it's already happening. What you say, because we are really connected to our smartphones. Even if there is no physical bound, but there is a lot of mental bound. So I think I was also talking a lot with philosophers because we also at FinalSpark, we try to collaborate with philosophers to help us to answer some questions related to, this new technology. And they also say that, technology is changing us all the time since we exist. Every time there is some development, it changes us and we are different people. So I think we don't really need the chip inside our head to be really connected to technology. So I think this is already happening. Also the screening, as you mentioned, that AI can tell you if you are healthy or not. There are a lot of tools today. Maybe they are not yet perfect, but I think there is huge development towards this in some tracking technologies. So I'm sure it's already happening. At FinalSpark, we actually don't really want to connect to people, physically, but we want to build computers which has some components which we also have, which means living neurons. So the same neurons as we have in our head, we want to use them as processors in a living computer. So that's something what we want to do. Some people ask if we want to put these chips into the brain. No, we don't try to do this. But there are people who also work on such technologies to put something in your head, but not what we do. We just use the component from our biology, but it will be separate computer, the same way as we have today digital computers. They're also separate from us physically.
Will these computers be kind of alive once you do that?
This is actually philosophical questions. Hard to say. I mean, alive technically yes, because we use living in cells. So you have living neurons. So yes, they are alive, but this is maybe not like an organism. This is much more simple, and is actually very common in research because in many labs in the world we have many cultures of different cell types. You can have whatever you want, skin cells, you can have, I don't know, stomach cells or neurons, any kind of cells. And they are alive, of course. So that means they are not multiplicating. They follow the biological rules. They need to be fed. They need to stay at a certain temperature. So yes, they are alive. But of course, this is not like a whole human. These are just the cells. Yes, but they are living. Yes, and yes, indeed, we will have living computers.
Wow. And would that computer be able to, if it's connected obviously to a certain printers, could it generate bones? Could it generate certain body parts that's needed
No,
for
I don't think so.
humans?
No, it's more about processing information. So we don't want to produce some biological tissue. We rather want to use neurons for processing power. So as today you run artificial neural networks on digital hardware, tomorrow we would like to run biological networks on neurons. So basically, all the tasks which are run or on artificial neural networks theoretically could be done also on neurons. Also, we can do this in our heads. And also, when we look at the human brain, we can have some ideas what brain is doing good as compared to the digital computer. For example, brain is very good at solving some complex problems with very little energy. So rather, it's that direction of processing information efficiently with
Efficiently,
low
without
energy.
using with low energy, without using all this power that it's needed right now, all this electricity and water.
Yes.
Which electricity we needed for our own survival, and water we needed more for our own survival.
Yes, absolutely.
And so that will be the future, you would think, of
Yes.
computing or computing. Yes,
Yes.
very interesting. And how did you get into business development? Like, what
Ah,
really got you into it? I mean, you're so much involved into science. You're a scientist, PhD holder, and to say, you know what, I want to also be an entrepreneur and focus on business development. And you're a speaker, so you give speeches, you coach other women, and it's a big thing right now. Women in tech, women in leadership, women in entrepreneurship. So you really have more than three even hats you wear.
so I was lucky actually. I think when you work in a small company, you have a lot of exposure. And I started since my first job outside academia. I started always with small organizations. So I always had a close connection to the founder. So I could see what they do and how they do this. And I got inspired. So I think that's important. And also, again, in a small company, another advantage is that you can have few jobs at the same time. So, for example, when I had my first job, they gave me project management, sales, and business development to do because they knew that that I will be bored if I have to do one thing all the time. And always, when there was some new project, some new client, something non-standard, they always come to me because they knew I will enjoy it and I can, easily work without. Some instruction, let's say, I can figure out, because that's what you usually have to do in a small company. You have to figure out how to do things because there are not so many procedures, because a lot of things are done for the first time. So yeah, I think it's just trial and error. And yes, and the luck that in a small organization you can have a lot of exposure, so you have a chance to try different things and you can see what you prefer, because I could also go in totally different direction if I would enjoy something else. But I always follow what I like to do. So it's just a feeling. When you like to do this, then it's for you.
Let's talk about your new startup company. And have you, obviously from everything you said, it seems like you guys been bootstrapping it yourself, or you got funding, or basically you and the founders, basically with your knowledge and resources and capability, say, hey, we can pull this off ourselves.
No, actually, FinalSpark was founded in 2014, so it was long before they knew me. At that time, I was still doing my PhD. So it has a long history, and actually, the founders have done also some previous ventures. So they've done a lot of things. I would say they know more than me, but on some things, of course, maybe not everything, but most of the stuff definitely. And initially, FinalSpark was founded to build a thinking machine. That was long before ChatGPT. So also, even having conversation with machine, it was still a dream, a good conversation, let's say. And at the beginning, they played a lot with the digital, technologies because they come from that. They have also PhDs, but in signal processing, which is definitely mathematics. It's more on the other side, let's say, not biology. And they try to play with algorithms, which we know in digital world. But what they have discovered is that it costs a lot of money to make a good model. And this is indeed now, you can see this very clearly with ChatGPT. The success is in big part because of the huge money it was spent. So you cannot do such a stuff cheaply. So the better model depends on more money you put on this. It has to be big. So they realized in around 2018 that they cannot, compete as a small startup with limited resources. They cannot compete with the huge players, which are already doing what is obvious, because that was already obvious that you have to do this. You have to put money, make bigger models, for example, put more data. So they realized that as a startup, they have to figure out something else. And because of the first employee at FinalSpark, Jean-Marc, he had already some experience with living neurons because he had the chance to work with Professor Markram, which is very famous neuroscientist in Switzerland. He did some small project there in his lab, and he had, let's say, some kind of experience with living neurons. So they realized, okay, maybe this is good starting point. Let's try living neurons, because that's really something totally new, and it's too disruptive to be done by big players because it's still very high risk. So it's perfect task for startups. And they decided to try programming living neurons. So that's the history. That's the history why FinalSpark exists.
Are you the only company out there right now, I would say, experiencing and building computers with living neurons? I mean, this is pretty. I heard about it, but I didn't know if it actually existed or only big, massive companies with big funding behind them building such a thing.
So
So,
no, we are not the only one, and actually it's a good thing because if we would be the only one in the world, that would mean maybe the project doesn't make sense if we thinking about this, because technology development always happens in some kind of constraints. So actually the next steps are kind of logic based on what we have so far. So it's normal thing that people in different places in the world have the same ideas at similar time, I think. So we are happy that we have competitors. We are anyway creating new industry, so there is enough space. And I think it's more convincing for anyone that this makes sense if there are other players. So our biggest competitor are Cortical Labs. They are based in Australia. They have technically a little bit different approach, but idea is the same, to build computer from living neurons. There is also Koniku in US, but Koniku so far as we know, a little bit changed the strategy. So from general computing more to the smell detection, because you could use living neurons theoretically for smell detection, very, very precise. So yes, this is to the best of our knowledge. These are the most important projects. And we know that there are some attempts, some other maybe early stage projects, but we do not know anything serious. At least we don't get any data about seriousness. But we know that there are some other people thinking also about living neurons as a computer.
so
So
you're pretty
yes,
much disrupting the current structures that's being built right now with your
yes, you are
innovations.
right. But actually, what I really believe for the future is, we don't want to totally replace digital. That's not possible because there are some stuff which still computers do much better. And, it wouldn't make sense to replace everything with the living neurons. But what I believe, no, no, also for the future, definitely. What I believe is there will be a lot of hybrid computing because there is also development in quantum computing, which also will take a lot of time. But let's say if it works one day, there will be also quantum computers. So I believe that there will be high variety of different processors to different tasks. And actually today you can see this already, this trend, because today we have a lot of, we started with CPU, now we have GPU, and actually there are many new chips which are still, of course, digital, which are optimized for specific tasks. So people do, for example, FPGA. There is this direction to do some chips for processing specific information more efficiently. So this is general trend, which I would say. So I believe it will be more variety in the future. So living computers will be part of the ecosystem. I don't think it will be threat to the existing servers. Maybe we will need a bit less new servers in the future because we will have living neurons. But I think those servers which we have today will still be useful because it will be hybrid. So digital will also be necessary. And also today, actually, when we work with living neurons, our neurons are connected to digital hardware, and we are still doing experiments, and everything is connected to digital.
Got it. Because I was going to say there's the digital AI, there's the quantum computing coming up, which they've been still not ready. A lot of money and time is being invested, and neuron computing, that's what you in.
Yes.
And the other two companies you mentioned in the States and Australia. What living neurons computers or neuron computing, difference between that and AGI?
I don't know, AGI I think can be applied to anything. It could be also maybe on quantum, it can be also on living neurons, I think, because it's general artificial intelligence. So I think it could be on any machine. It doesn't have to be silicon. That's at least how I see this. But when you ask about the difference between silicon and the brain and the neurons, there are many differences. And actually, we know a lot, actually. We still don't know enough, but we know a lot about how neurons work. And we know, for example, that they are that they are storing memory and processing information in the same place, in contrary to computers, where you have RAM and processor. So this is also for energy saving. We know also that neurons are very hierarchical. So, they process information in a hierarchy. So not everything is the same important. We are, as a humans, filtering all the time because we are not able to process all the data which coming to us, all the sensory input. So it's very important because theoretically computer is using every data with the same importance. Of course, we can maybe adjust some algorithm, but theoretically for computer everything is the same, of the same importance. So it, for example, works for image recognition, especially the movement, because your brain is analyzing only changes in the picture, so it's like only changing pixels, and computer is analyzing all the pixels all the time. So that's a good example. So yes, there are a lot of differences. Of course, also very important is that silicon is working on 0-1 system. So everything is encoded with zeros and ones, but brain is working differently. It's processing information in time and space. So it matters where in your brain and at what time neurons are active. So this is totally different type of encoding. So there are a lot of differences, and we know for sure that brain is not so fast like computer. We don't have also huge memory in neurons, but the main advantage of neurons is the fact that they can analyze complex information efficiently. So, for example, for generative AI, that would be good application.
Got it. And I heard that, there's the new neuron chips, that actually will help blind person be able to see.
You mean about Neuralink?
Yeah, Neuralink, yes.
Yes, that's also a different project because they want to put something in the brain. Yes, but it's somehow connected because in this type of projects you have to understand how neurons work. So we are trying to understand how they work, how they process information. So I think our project can be supportive for such ideas.
So it is possible. You could see the future there. You could see the light
Yes.
in the end of the tunnel in such a
Oh
thing.
yeah, definitely. If we understand the language of neurons, I think it will bring enormous possibilities. Because our objective is just to build a computer, but theoretically, with this knowledge, you can also maybe interact with the human brain, with some other projects. So yes, there will be huge opportunities. Another big problem next to blindness is also spinal cord injuries. So that's also something which where we could theoretically contribute, because that's all about understanding neurons. And also when you have prosthetics, for example, the more we understand on how neurons work, the more accurate the prosthetics can be. They can be more.
You said something
similar to
very
how
intriguing.
our...
You said understanding the language of neurons.
Yes, that's what we're trying to understand.
What is that? It's another
So the
coding
point is,
language? Is it kind of genetic language? What is it?
no, so it's spikes. So basically neurons, they produce spikes, which are electrical impulse. You can measure them on electrodes. And this is the language of neurons, let's say. This is the way how you program them. And the frequency of spikes, amount of spikes, is information. But nobody really knows today. Nobody knows how neurons encode information. So you don't really know what these spikes mean. And that's actually the biggest problem, because nobody really knows how to program them. So we do a lot of trial and error. We try to send them some signals, electrical signals. We try to measure the response. But nobody really knows how to adjust these signals, how to construct such a signals that you can get a logic response from neurons.
Well, so there's a lot to learn there.
Oh,
But
yes, absolutely.
Would you think that, I wouldn't know, but digital AI will be able to help in understanding
yes.
the language, understanding the language of neurons because of the signals that it sent?
Yes, this is very good question, and absolutely yes. Because actually we are already playing with ChatGPT. We are trying actually to figure out such a process where ChatGPT can do experiments automatically, because our lab is working in such a way that neurons are connected, everything is connected to digital hardware, and actually is available also remotely, because you do experiments in such a way that you just write a script in Python programming language, and you write in Python what you want to do with neurons. You want to send signal at this time, all the parameters you put in your Python. And then everything is executed automatically through the electronic system. And then you can also collect data automatically from the neurons, and that also you can analyze them in Python. So because it's all programming based, it can also be executed by LLM. Why not? Of course, they are very good now in doing such stuff. So we are also trying to employ LLM so that it can write scripts for us, do experiments, analyze data, and write another script. And I generally believe, it's very interesting direction, and definitely yes, AI is very helpful, not only in R&D, it's also so helpful in commercial work. I can confirm myself, I also use it a lot. And I think, yes, it's very important to learn how to use it in our work, because it can significantly increase our output. And if we don't do this, then we stay behind others who do this.
Absolutely. How does quantum computing play a role in this, which is still in the development, supposedly, unless if it's done and it's not released to the public?
Yes.
But how does that play into this equation?
So quantum computing, I'm not an expert at all. However, I believe it's another piece in the puzzle, because as I said, there will be many technologies which will be optimal for some specific tasks. And as far as I know, quantum computing can be optimal, for example, for cryptography. So for this kind of tasks, quantum will be perfect. So maybe we will have the future where we have different type of processors, as I mentioned, and quantum also will be one of them. But quantum is totally different. It's totally different hardware, different mechanism, different ideas, because quantum is based on physics. Totally, there is no living, let's say, organism involved in quantum computers. And it's totally different way of working, but they have similar problems, because they also have to figure out the language, how to program quantum computer. So, and it's always the same, because when you have totally different hardware, which is not the logic gates like you have in silicon, but something different, then of course the language, the programming language will be totally different. So this is always a huge, huge challenge, because this requires some radical change in thinking. So how to approach the problem from different thing, because if you want to try logic gates on the neurons, it doesn't make sense, because they don't work that way. So it's very difficult actually to discover this another language,
So
and
you could,
many people are trying to figure out this.
so you would never be able to connect neurons computing with quantum computing together.
Well, maybe you can connect in the future in a pipeline, then where neurons do something and quantum does something. I think this is
Correct.
possible. But in general, I would say these are two fields which are at the moment independent. Like there are not so much things in common because things which we do in biology are different than we do in quantum, I believe. So there's not so much in common at the moment.
Um, all of this will maybe give us the ability to predict the future, possibly, with all
Of
of
course.
this.
Yeah,
Wow.
I think yes. Even digital AI can, for example, predict weather now, which for many years was considered impossible. But I think now the new algorithms are quite accurate. So yeah, I think definitely we can learn more about future and past and present everything with AI, artificial intelligence. Yes,
But
definitely.
AI is doing it based on patterns, right? Or based on
Yes,
pattern or
absolutely,
no?
you're right. But human brain also recognize patterns. Actually, that's intelligence also. I
Yeah.
think I'm not an expert, maybe, but I think that's also definition. Maybe one of the definition of intelligence is
Yeah.
actually to recognizing patterns. I think it's all about patterns, definitely, in any kind of intelligence. Yes.
Amazing. Dr. Evelina, I know you said call me Evelina, but I have to call you Dr. Evelina because of
Thank you
so
so.
much knowledge you consume throughout your
That's so
life.
nice.
And you're
Thank
so
you.
much inspiring for other upcoming younger generation,
Thank you so
women,
much.
young females, and young men also to look up to you and say, hey, it is possible. You don't have to be born with a silver spoon in your mouth. It's just a matter of, using what do you have, what's accessible to you to the best of its ability or your ability, and here you are. That's the result, which is amazing. What's your advice to the newer generation who's really ready to graduate from school or high school and carve their pathway to college, and some of them are confused, like what do we study? We in an age where AI is involved, quantum computing, neurocomputing, neuroscience or neurocomputing, and all of that. Like, how do I choose my path? What should I be a scientist? Should I be an engineer? Is that the only thing? Should I ditch medical? Should I not be a lawyer or be a writer? Whatever my interest is, designer. There's so many fields. Many kids want to choose a path, and everyone have a different interest. What's your advice to that?
So I would say, I always say that it's good to follow the excitement and what really interests you, because I think it's very bad idea to take a job just because you hope it will be well paid in the future, because we never know the future. And also, even if it will be well paid, it will be suffering. I know a lot of people who do the jobs just because they are well paid, and it's not fun. So I really think it's good to follow the interest, the excitement, of course, what you can do without getting tired. And then anyway, in the future, nobody knows the future. So we don't really know what will happen in 3 to 5 years now because of the generative AI. For sure, a lot of things will change. And for sure, what will be very important is ability to learn and adaptability, and also ability to apply AI in your work. So whatever you do, you can think yourself always where in your process you can put artificial intelligence. At least this is something which I think is good to do today. And future, we don't know anyway. But if even if some projects is let's say, even if some job disappear, we can always retrain ourselves. But if we get stuck in something which we don't like, that's a tragedy. So I definitely don't advise this. So it's just to do what you interested most.
Dr. Avelina, I know you have a full plate between your company that you founded, Akai.io, and also you sit on the board of a strategic advisor for FinalSpark. So that's a lot of responsibility, both. What's next for you? What's on the horizon to look for, to follow, to connect with you? What's next?
Well, actually, I was planning recently to learn a bit about quantum computing. So that's my plan, to educate myself, because I was just thinking that, yes, I'm interested in alternative computing. Um I don't know why. It's just fascinating for me. I'm also interested in neuromorphic computing, but I don't have any specific plans yet about this.
One more
But
time. Euro. What is it? Oh,
neuromorphic. So
neuromorphic.
this is
Neuromorphic.
the field. Actually, it's a bit behind biocomputing because it's something in between. Because these are the technologies where people try to mimic a brain, but not with living neurons. But they try to build some silicon chips or even analog chips, which would work more like brain. So, for example, you can have a chip which will have also spikes. So not logic gates in zero ones, but where information is encoded in spikes. So that's also interesting field which I'm exploring. Um, and I think it's also quite promising, rather for short term. And it's not such a huge revolution like a biological computing, but it's maybe some short-term solution for energy saving.
Are we on the path of building an actual computer where, or machine that has logic, it has subconscious? Because between, the neurocomputing, the all everything everything you mentioned, are we on the way or getting closer to creating a computer that literally could think like a human, have feelings? You know, it could understand, it could feel, it could use logic, it could use things based on emotions, make wrong decisions, right decisions.
So I think that maybe it doesn't depend on the substrate. So just because we use living neurons, it doesn't mean our computers will be more conscious than digital. I think these questions comes when artificial intelligence becomes more intelligent. So even today we have LLMs, large language models. They are based on silicon, and they are just zeros and ones behind. But still, many people ask if they are maybe conscious or maybe they have something more. Because if you have conversation which is like with a human, then you ask this maybe, oh, maybe it also has feelings like me. So I think I don't know. I think it's a bias maybe which we have. We like to anthropomorphize everything, so see human traits in all the things. Some people even believe plants have a soul. So, I think it's our tendency. Whether this is true or not, I don't know. I think this is a question for philosophers. But I am sure that with the progress, the technology will be more and more similar to human. I know there are also a lot of developments. I was just yesterday watching a video about humanoid robots, which are more and more resembling us. And you will be able to talk with them also because we have LLMs. So with technology, I think in the future, who knows, maybe it will be difficult to distinguish between human and technology. And the more similarities to us, the more we will believe that they also have a feelings, and they are like us, but it doesn't have to be true. I think philosophers has to answer for that. I don't know.
Does that scare you?
No, no. I generally see the bright side. I believe, in the bright future, but it's always a point of view, I know. But I generally believe in the positive impact. Yes.
Amazing.
I think that technology, like I see my life and compare like 50 years ago, I prefer to live now. But no, yeah, I definitely think that our life is easier and more comfortable with technology. I have no doubt. But of course, there are also threats because we mentally sometimes not manage the technology development.
Dr. Ewelina Kurtys,
Yes.
really, I enjoyed this conversation. Extremely insightful and
Thank you.
inspiring. But
Thank
I
you so much.
know I could go on for hours. Something that interests me. I'm obsessed with this.
Thank you.
So, yes, and I just want to say it was an honor and pleasure having you on the show. I'm sure our viewers will enjoy it. At Entrepreneurs
Thank
in
you.
Tech presents, no, INNOV-8 presents Entrepreneurs in Tech. Thank you again. Be sure to follow us on social media. Until next time,
Mhm.
keep
Yes.
innovating and stay curious and don't never stop learning like Dr. Ewelina. She's taken another subject on. I don't think she'll ever stop learning. She's like I would say her brain is a library of encyclopedia of all kinds of information, scientific information. Yes.
Exaggerated, but thank you so much for this nice words. Thank you.
Thanks. Absolutely. Thank you and take care.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
If you enjoyed today's episode, make sure to share INNOV-8 Presents Entrepreneurs in Tech podcast. And if you're joining us on YouTube, please like this video and subscribe to the channel. Until next time.